All right, everybody, welcome back to the Unshaken Truth podcast. I'm your host, Pearson Williford, and I'm here with my new friend, Dan. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Pearson?
I'm good.
Awesome.
So this episode is just really talking about Dan and his ministry called Spend a Year with Jesus. So can you just tell us a little about yourself and tell us a little about Spend a Year with Jesus?
Yeah. I was born into a farming family.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the dirt is in my blood.
Mm-hmm.
I love human experience. All that we as people go through, and then around the world, been able to travel. But so when I come to the Gospels and I read about Jesus, I want to know, what did he experience?
Mm-hmm.
If I woke up in the morning in the same house as Jesus, what would we be doing? Those were some of the questions that really kind of struck me. So went down to Dallas Theological Seminary, got some degrees, got a PhD, and have been studying the Gospels. I also do IT consulting. So that's where the whole app and technology side of this project comes from. It's not a book, it's an app.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's just some of the background.
That's so cool, and I think it's so cool how like technology through the past, I guess you could say, over a while, has been helping people disciple and helping people follow Jesus. And I think this app is just a reflection of that. It's so cool to have you on this podcast. So truly, like, where did this idea start to create an app or to create text messages that tell somebody what Jesus is doing that day? Where did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so back in probably 2004, 2005, before the iPhone 1.
I wasn't even born yet.
when flip phones ruled the world.
Yeah.
I started talking to some colleagues, had some Christian colleagues, and we would just talk about Jesus and his experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I started coming up with just sort of a framework of, man, it would be cool to think about what it was like for Jesus to sort of set up and tear down those. Whenever you do a project, right, you always have prep and then you have cleanup. And we just get Jesus rolls in, heals people, and then he rolls out, but we don't get all the surrounding, right? And so we started talking about all the logistics of Jesus' ministry. This was back in 2004, 2005. Buddy named Jason and I, we just talk about it. And so at that time, the university I was working for needed an alert system. So I started looking into text messaging and how we could write code to send text messages. So I'm developing this text message system for the university. We're talking about Jesus and his day-to-day. And then that just sort of morphed into, okay, what would it look like? Because at that time, Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Now X, but at that time, Twitter was huge. So what would it look like if Jesus just tweeted 3 times a day? Here's what I'm doing. And so that all sort of converged. And about 2008, I started writing. 2010, we incorporated the nonprofit ministry and did a Passion Week experiment. And then 2011, we rolled out the year, and we've been rolling out the year ever since.
Wow, that's so cool. Were there any like pivotal like moments that are like, man, this is like a really awesome moment, like I can see God's hand in this?
Yeah, I mean, when we rolled out Passion Week, we had the opportunity to make contact with people all over the country. And what was really neat is the way that the text messages brought families together. And we would get feedback from parents, hey, the kids are asking, what's Jesus doing? What's Jesus eating? And there's only so many options in the first century.
Yeah, it's like...
But I think for people, one of the most beautiful pieces of feedback I received was from a lady in Indiana who said, I can invite this Jesus over to my house. Jesus is so much more open to me.
Wow.
And that was really neat, because then she could go back to the Gospels and read those stories with a different tone. Jesus is not distant. He's not over her. Now he's just somebody who's living alongside of her, eating, sleeping, gathering.
Wow. I think that is so cool. I gotta get chills, like just the thought of like I think it's so cool that even though we know Jesus is with us always spiritually, but it's also like adding that into to make him feel more that he's here physically as well. And so I think that is just
Yeah.
that is so awesome. Now tell us, like, were there any points of like struggles where like, man, I don't like, were there any points of struggles in your 10-year span of making this happen?
The biggest struggle is, what do you do when there's nothing in the Gospels to inform that day?
Mm-hmm.
So what I originally wrote, I rolled out to my mother and then my father-in-law. And it was all this, well, Jesus might have done this, or he could have done that. And they hated it.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not really getting what Jesus did. They said, go back to the drawing board. So I did. And that was really pivotal because I started doing even more research. And then I started making decisions and said, if this is true, then this must be true, and this must be true. And so, for example, Jesus wakes up in the morning, he eats 2 meals a day. Normally it's like goat's milk if he's in Galilee, and then you're going to have bread with just about every. So I could craft those kinds of messages, but it was really pivotal. It's pivotal because I think I was too hesitant to make decisions about Jesus' experience. And then after more research, I realized, no, there's really some definitive things I can say about what he did.
Yeah, I think that's hard because you're dealing with the King of Kings.
Yes.
And you're having to like tell people and like wake up every single day. Okay, this is not exactly what he did, but what he most likely did.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a big weight.
It is.
So
yes, and we felt it.
That I would feel it too. I would be like, man, I'm having to deal with like, okay, this is the Lord of all, and I'm having to choose what did he do in this day in the first century of this last year.
Yeah.
So that is crazy.
I met with a DTS professor. I get down here in 2008 to work on a THM. Okay. And this DTS professor, I think I could say his name, he's deceased, but Dr. Pentecost.
Okay.
And so I go into Dr. Pentecost's office and I tell him about my idea and I show him some of the days that I've written. And he just starts shaking his head. You're going outside of Scripture. I was never comfortable with that. And I said, thank you.
Wow. So you definitely face some lashback. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But with all due respect to Dr. Pentecost, he has his method and style. Sure. And right now he's standing before Jesus and they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And someday, I will stand before Jesus and I'll say, hey, this was my method and my style. Tell me if I was right or wrong.
That's very interesting. And you kind of talked about it before, just like some testimonies. Like what has to be like your favorite testimony? I know you talked about the families and stuff, like,
yeah,
and then the other lady. But what was like your favorite testimony so far that has helped people get closer to Jesus through this hour?
So I've got a friend, a classmate back in 2010, and he's now a missionary in Sao Paulo.
Okay.
But his feedback, I mean, it was both awesome and challenging, because he said he got the text messages and he pictured Jesus in Israel. Would he buy a plane ticket and go to Israel if Jesus were teaching today? And that was just such a challenge. I was like, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
But to consider, okay, what resources would I dedicate? Because all the people in the first century had to make that decision.
Yeah.
And so his feedback, I think, it just sticks with me. Yeah. Would I drop what I'm doing right now if I knew I could go listen to Jesus? And would I go to wherever he is? And that was so powerful.
Yeah, because we talk about, in Christian songs and Christian, scripture, we talk about being abandoned and being surrendered. It's like, okay, like if Jesus was in Israel preaching, you drop everything and hop on a plane and go to Israel, like, or
I can't tell you how many times I have prayed the prayer, I am sorry, God, I was so busy today.
Yeah, I feel like in America that is such a struggle, because we live in this culture that is so so busy, but not in the point that we feel like we always need to be busy.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big sin struggle. It's a big tool that the enemy uses to trick us.
Yeah. Can I throw in one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Spending a year with Jesus has given me so much peace in this area too. Because when you think about what it would take to fund a nonprofit ministry in Dallas with 13 employees, that's a big revenue stream.
Yeah.
13 employees with rent, going over to the Kroger or Albertsons or where, I mean, when you put together all the logistics that it takes to keep 13, in Jesus' day, guys, but 13 employees on the road, there was some work that they had to do. And you see it throughout the ministry of Jesus. You see boats appear, and you see Peter and John and James and the guys, they're out on Galilee fishing and stuff. You see these activities. We have to work. We have to eat. And it just kind of brought peace to my soul because God knows we have to work. We have to eat, right?
Yeah.
It's that extra layer of busy that you just mentioned that I think we have to struggle with.
Yeah.
And submit over to God.
That definitely is, because I that's the first time I ever thought about that. Because I think I read the Gospels and it's like Jesus healed this, Jesus healed that, Jesus healed there, and then
he's got this income stream.
Yeah,
okay,
he's doing great. But I think okay, whenever he was healing, what were the disciples doing in the back? Yes, they were helping him, manage the crowd and everything. But who knows? Peter might have been fishing, getting next day's breakfast.
Yeah.
And so I think looking into all the little details, every little piece, is so fascinating.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Now tell me a little bit about the writing process. Now, how did that happen? How did you create it? So tell me a little bit about that.
It started with that conditional Jesus might have kind of thing. But as we talked about it, talking with guys like Jason, another guy named Scott, Dana, got a friend named Doug, as we're kicking this idea around, right? We're seeing Twitter just ascend and become this way of communicating with each other. And so 140 characters became the established limit of the event. So it's almost like a Polaroid, just a little snapshot. But they had to be visual, and so the wording had to create a picture in your head. And so I took from 2010 all the way, even after we rolled in 2011, I was still doing a lot of editing on the text messages. Some of them, I'd get the text message and I'd be like, that's cool. And then others I'm going, what was I thinking when I wrote that? And so over about 4 years, it took time for the story to solidify. And then I had to figure out, okay, you're getting 3 text messages a day, but there are streams of conflict in Jesus' life and in his last year. So it's September, and you get this text message, the temple guards have been dispatched to arrest Jesus. And Doug calls me on the phone, and he says, Dan, I think that there's a malfunction. It's not working. You're too early. It's not Easter yet. I said, Doug, read John chapter 7, that they were dispatched during the Feast of Tabernacles.
Oh, wow.
He's like, I never thought about that. And so that conflict stream between Jesus and the Pharisees is really, when you think about a narrative, a story, right? If you're going to do a movie or something, you got to have a strong conflict. Well, that conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees is just through the whole year. And it's there in the Bible too, but, you go to the miracles or Zacchaeus or the disciples on the road, and you kind of forget that always in the background, you have this opposing force. Thousands of scholars. And every time Jesus walks into a town, they're asking him, by what authority do you do these things? So you get kind of that repetition in order to tell the story in a way that communicates, okay, how did Jesus go to the cross? Why did he end up there? Right? So it's not just, hey, he had goat's milk for breakfast, but it's also he went out to teach, and at some point in the teaching, he's going to be addressed, and there's going to be conflict with the religious leaders in whatever community. And so looking at Mark chapter 3, looking at Matthew chapter 12, Luke chapter 11 and 12, I mean, you see this conflict just distributed throughout the Gospels, and that became kind of a stream that underlay the here's what Jesus is doing at this moment. So it's not just a chronicle. It actually the story has a plot, and it's all driving towards the cross.
Wow, that's so powerful and so cool. Let me ask this question. This is not my notes or anything. So does it start January and then ends, like, I guess does it go like
Easter to Easter?
Easter to Easter. Okay,
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah,
That would make more sense actually. So
yeah. So right now the storyline is driving towards Easter 2026.
okay,
You're not going to align with the current 2025 Jewish calendar, but because of Jesus' first century practice, what'll happen is you'll celebrate Rosh Hashanah with Jesus, but you can look at your calendar and you'll see, oh, hey, Rosh Hashanah is Friday. In the first century, it was on Tuesday.
Okay, that's so cool. Now, how did you balance? I know we talked about it a little bit, but how did you balance biblical accuracy and storytelling? Because I feel like that can be very difficult. And like you said with your professor, you got definitely some lashbacks. So how did you balance that?
Yeah, in terms of the actual gospel text, I don't think that you could write a year with Jesus for like the first year of his ministry.
Okay.
We just don't have enough data.
Yeah, that's
right?
fair. That's very fair.
You see in Mark chapter 3 that people heard about his miracles. Clearly, Jesus had a dynamite activity effect in Galilee, right? But I don't feel comfortable inventing all those miracles.
Yeah,
right.
You don't want to like you say, oh, he did this, he went there, if you don't have it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what I did is I started with the last year because you get a very nice framework built out for the last year. It starts in Matthew chapter 14, Mark chapter 6, and then it's around Luke chapter 8. That's where you really pick up, and the feeding of the 5,000, that's kind of our blast off.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But then you turn left and you go into the Old Testament and you start looking at the Torah. Okay, Jewish males have to attend 3 feasts. So you've got your 3 feasts. Each of the feasts is 7 days long. It takes 5 days to get to Jerusalem from Capernaum. Okay, so now I've got 5 days on the front, 7 days, 10 days. That's 54 days of our year. Then I've got the feeding of the 5,000. How long does it take for a crowd of 5,000 to gather in Dallas today? I mean, Jesus wasn't Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I mean, I like to go to concerts with my kids.
Yeah, sure.
And I go to the House of Blues.
Okay.
The House of Blues, big auditorium, is 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
So how many bands can pull 5,000 from a metroplex like Dallas, right? So for Jesus to pull 5,000 from rural Galilee.
Whoa. I just thought about that. Dude, that just hit me. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
He has to be in the same place too. Because we're plotting out, like my daughter and I have tickets for the Wombats in October.
Yeah.
So we're planning way out, and we know, hey, they're going to be here in October. Okay, so you start putting those kinds of logistics into the story, and you realize, okay, he's got to be in a predictable location. We've got to have word going out all over the place. People then have got to be drawn to this. And it says they came from as regions as far away as Tyre and Sidon.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so when you start putting all that together, it provides boundaries, it provides gutters and frameworks, and so then you can actually start to plot the storyline. Right now, in the Spend a Year with Jesus, today, Jesus is teaching in Tyre.
Okay.
Okay, how did he get there? Jewish hospitality system. It says in Mark 3 that people came from the region of Tyre and Sidon. What they would have done with a teacher like Jesus is invite him back to their community as a traveling rabbi. Okay, so we can kind of develop the story in terms of he's leaving from Capernaum. It's going to take him like 4 days to get up to Tyre.
Wow.
So again, all that travel time is calculable. And then you just insert the gospel stories into that travel time, if that makes sense. So there you go.
Wow, that is so cool. And like you're saying things that I've never thought about in just like the history and everything. And here's just a little quick question. Do you think technology is helping or hurting faith?
I think it's helping.
Okay.
And here's why. The book is a technology in AD 300.
Yeah, that for sure.
And Christians in AD 300, they took this new technology, the book, and they leveraged it to give us the New Testament that we have today with all the wealth of manuscripts that lay behind the versions that we read today. At one time, the scroll was a technology, the Old Testament. Yeah. And so what we do with our computers, what we do with our phones, what we do with the internet, right? That's really the key as Christians, our creativity, to leverage the resources that God has, in some ways, given us the creativity to create. I know that's redundant, but but here we are. It's really, how are we going to use these things? So yes, I think that technology enables the church. I mean, even stained glass is a technology at some point.
Sure.
And so being able to see the stories in lieu of being literate to read. I mean, these are all keys to making contact with God.
Wow. So cool, and so cool how you pointed that toward, how the Bible was technology at one point. And then, so how has this project grown in your faith? Like, how have you grown in your walk with Christ through creating this app?
So it was 2014, January 1st. And the text that came through was, keep seeking, keep knocking, keep asking. That's from Matthew 7 in the Message version by Eugene Peterson. And it's knock and the door will be open to you, seek and you will find. And it just, that hit me in terms of the Christian walk. I mean, that was 2014. I got another text at another time, and it was Jesus in the shop, and he's working on a yoke or something. And I'm in my IT consulting work, I'm constantly questioning, should I be doing more ministry? I need the consulting to pay the bills, and I just go back and forth personally. What is God calling me to do personally? And as I look at Jesus' experience and recognize the reality of work and the work that we need to do. I mean, even John 21 and the disciples going fishing after the resurrection.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't tell me that was a decision where they're like, well, what do we do now? Oh, Jesus is risen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're waiting on the edge of their seats for Jesus, but they needed to go fishing. They caught a very large amount of fish, 153. Why would John write 153? Because he had to pay taxes on those fish. Anything that you catch and eat, you don't have to pay taxes on. Anything that you catch and sell, you have to pay taxes on.
That's so fascinating.
So as I'm doing my taxes in March, April, and the Spend a Year with Jesus story ends because it's an early Easter, and then I'm thinking about John 21. Now all of a sudden, God is sitting with me as I'm doing my taxes.
Wow. Because
he was sitting with James and John and Andrew and Peter, providing for them, including the ability to pay a tax to Rome.
Wow.
And it just, all those intersections of experience, right, over the past 10 years have really helped anchor my faith so that when I doubt, not if I doubt, but when I doubt, or when I am overwhelmed with self-doubt, I just go back to, hey, this is part of human experience. This was part of Jesus's experience. And then when I go to Hebrews 4, and it says we have a high priest who has been tempted in every way, I'm not thinking about the temptations that are youthful temptations. I'm thinking about the temptation to cheat on my taxes, right? I mean,
sure.
I'm thinking about the temptation to not do work as unto the Lord, but just do work so that I can cash a check so that I can then buy whatever the next thing is. You know, so all these compromises that I look at in my adult life, I'm going, Jesus never compromised.
Wow.
He never questioned God. And, okay, God, what are you doing? I'm angry with you because I wanted to go left and you made me go right, right? He never did that. But he was tempted in every way, just like I am.
I think that's so peaceful to know that Jesus went through our struggles.
Yeah.
And though he didn't give in to them, but he still understands them. He still knows them. I think that's so powerful. And then, you know, what would you have for the viewers, tips to daily connect with Jesus?
Yeah. So one thing that has helped me is I will pick a verse. I know that there's year-long reading plans and everything, but part of the Spend a Year with Jesus experience is to boil down the experience so that you don't have to sit for half an hour. You just have to read and imagine. So I know people love Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. I'll write that on a note card and I'll just put it in my pocket. Well, now with my phone, I get at 9 a.m., I get the, hey, see what Jesus is doing today. Mm-hmm. And that just sort of brings me back to Jesus. So anything that you can do to sort of surround yourself, to reorient or fix your eyes on Jesus, like Hebrews 12, you know, that's really my encouragement. Is it's great if you have an hour and you can pray for an hour. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, everybody's got a bathroom mirror. Put a verse on it.
Wow. That's a great quote. That's a great quote. That's awesome. Man, as we close, where can listeners find you and your app and your website and all that stuff?
Yeah, so the app is available on the Apple App Store.
Nice.
It's also available for Android.
Sweet.
And you can go to wjes.us.
Sweet.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
It's with Jesus,
nice.
But it's wjes.us. And there you'll get the website, and then there are links on the homepage to the apps.
That's awesome. And I'll put that all in the description for the viewer. And any final encouragements for the listeners? Anything else have for the listeners?
Life is long.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody, Jesus can change your day. I know there's a lot of talk about, you know, this is life-changing, or we're going to change the world. Let Jesus change your day.
Wow.
Just today.
Let
him in. Let him encourage you. Let him change your day.
Wow. That is so powerful. Just one day at a time.
That one day at a time.
Well, thank you, Dan, for coming on the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope this was a blessing as much as it was for me. And I just thank you, Dan, again for coming on here. Go check out Spend a Year with Jesus. I'm going to check it out. It's going to be a blessing. And I hope you all have a great day. God bless.